On the surface, being nice seems like a harmless expectation, but what if that very expectation is what's keeping you stuck? Silent, compliant, and far from the impact you're meant to make. Welcome to Beyond the Pattern Life and Leadership Unlocked, the podcast for anyone ready to lead themselves and others differently. I'm Bukhalo Gintala, keynote speaker with over 20 years of experience in HR. I'm a firm believer that all leadership begins with self-leadership, because when you choose to change your pattern, you unlock the power to change your world. Today's guest is someone whose work demands that we take a deeper look at what we've been taught to accept, especially around race, power, identity, and the rules of being agreeable. Amira K. Barger is the award-winning Executive Vice President of Communications and Head of DEI Advisory at one of the largest PR firms in the world. She's also a professor at Cal State East Bay, where she teaches marketing, communications, and change management. And now she's the author of a powerful new book, The Price of Nice, a sharp and personal deconstruction of how the pressure to be nice. Amira lives in Benicia, California, with her husband, Jonathan, and daughter, Audrey. And when she's not writing, teaching, or leading, she and her family are on a mission to visit all the U.S. national parks. Amira, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me and for that lovely introduction. I'm so glad to be here. Truly, this is one of my favorite things, is to be in conversation and community. So thank you for the space to do exactly that.
Oh, no, it's an honor. It's an honor. It's just been great to just, in researching you for the podcast. I mean, you do some really amazing things, and you have such the gift of language and communication. So I'm excited to have you on the show.
Thank you.
So first, before we jump in, I want to make sure I didn't leave anything out of your bio. So did I leave anything out? Anything you want to add for the audience?
Good question. Did we mention I teach also in my spare time when I'm not writing? I'm teaching the next generation of students. But no, you covered it all. There's lots in there. I have two furry sons, Bucky and Potato. In addition to my human child, I've got two fur babies.
Bucky
and Potato. We've got a big and a little, so they keep us entertained, and they also keep me fit and active because they need at least 2 walks a day. But other than that, you covered it all.
Okay, good. And if people want to get a hold of you, what's a good way to get a hold of you? Yep.
All of my contact info is at amirabarger.com, and I try to keep it really easy on every social channel. I'm simply at Amira Barger, from Blue Sky to TikTok to Instagram, LinkedIn, you name it. Just my name, at Amira Barger.
Okay, great. No, thank you. So before I dive in, how's your week been going? I didn't really even get to, check in with you. How's your week been going?
Really good. It is October right now, late October, and the sun is still out. So I'm in Northern California, and it's still sunny, and it's great hiking weather because my family and I do love to be outside. So this weekend was great. We got to kick it off by going and hiking up a mountain to eat pancakes. Our reward at the end of the hike was pancakes at Mount Tamalpais. So that was fun, and I'm still riding that pancake in the sky high.
I love that. I love the outdoors too. So one of the things we always explore here on the show is the origin story, not just the work, but of the person doing the work. So Amira, before you were a professor, executive, and author, what early experiences or patterns shaped how you moved through the world?
Early in my career, niceness helped me get in the room. People saw me as really nice, really easy to work with, and that was personally and professionally. I always joke that my late mother-in-law, Pearl, may she rest in power, she would refer to me for years as Precious Sweet Amira, like it was my government name. And so many other people began to refer to me as Precious Sweet Amira because I had really noticed that I was rewarded in many ways for playing the nice girl. And so I got into these habits and patterns of behavior, and I played that part for far too many years in my life. And it did serve a purpose in some ways. Like I said, it helped me get into some rooms. But that same pattern also kept me invisible once I was in those rooms, right? So it's like you won half the battle. You're in the room, but your voice is still not heard. You're still not seen. And later I learned that leaders who make real impact aren't the ones who blend in. They're the ones who bring tension with intention. And so today I coach myself and I coach other leaders in my team to replace nice with the antithesis of nice, which is not mean, but nerve, which to me has become over the years the courage to speak truth, even if it shakes the table that you're at, or even if your voice shakes. And I've been trying my hardest to unlearn those patterns of playing the nice girl and to practice more nerve, more courage, and truth telling.
Yeah, yeah, no, I love that. And as you talk about how that shift has occurred, it almost makes me wonder like when that shift occurred, because I do agree with you that there is more of an appreciation
Yeah.
for the courage it takes to challenge, in the spirit of innovation, or or in the spirit of just
Yep.
considering different ways of looking at things. So, yeah.
I think it's different for everyone to kind of dig in on what you were just about to go into further there, sort of the moment for when I realized that it was a pattern. I don't think there was one moment, but there's certainly a couple of moments that stand out as really stark in life. And for me, one of those moments was back in 2012. And that was right after a young Black man by the name of Trayvon Martin was murdered. And it was a very visceral moment for me, both personally and professionally. I remember that next morning I found myself in a room full of colleagues, and they were debating whether or not a child, he was 17, whether or not this young child brought it on himself. And I had very specific feelings about how wrong and gross a conversation I felt that was, but I stayed silent that day. And to this day, it haunts me that I stayed silent. It was one of those recognition moments that my own niceness and silence was complicity in many ways. And that was the crack in the facade, if you will. And the moment when I began asking, what is this habit of comfort and silence and playing nice costing me? And in many ways, it inspired the book's core question. I wrote a book this year of what is comfort costing us? And this desire to be liked and this desire to play nice so often.
Yeah, I mean that's what I love about you, Amira. You're like, so that's a pretty vulnerable response where
Yeah.
you're comfortable not look like, it's not about always looking good for you. And
Right.
I just really respect that, because I think we've all through the years had to come to terms with, okay, when are we going to find that emotional maturity to be courageous, right?
Yes.
And we all struggle with that, and that's a real example you gave, and I know that's relatable to many of us. So thank you for being so honest and
Of
vulnerable.
course.
So, what messages did you receive as a child, either
Mhm.
explicit or unspoken? I'll let you qualify it. But what messages did you receive as a child about success, survival, or even identity?
So many different ones. The first one that comes to mind is be nice. If you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. It costs nothing to be nice. Don't talk back. Respect authority. Don't question. Those were some of the sort of sacred mantras in my childhood home and upbringing and the people that surrounded me. And in many ways, they taught me deference, but not discernment, which is actually what I need and what so many of us need. And I had to reprogram myself to understand that respect doesn't mean silence, and that empathy without accountability is just appeasement. And who and what are we trying to appease? And so I had to learn to unbraid my conditioning. And I say unbraid because as a child, so I tell this story often. I don't know if you and I have shared about this story yet, but I'm an 80s baby, but the 90s raised me, I say and joke. But back in the day, we didn't even have cell phones yet. We barely had pagers and could talk to each other over pager code. And so one of the funny things we do every year so that everybody knew we had just gotten back from summer vacation is we had vacation hair. Just like the braids with the little beads on the end, usually when you had gone somewhere fabulous and sunny, an island of some sort. And as a child, my sisters and I, we had these two little best friends. They were twins. They were blonde haired and hazel eyed. And we were always at their house. They were always at ours. And they would always come back from summer vacation with vacation hair. And one year, as happened every year, their hair would turn into these frizzy haystacks, if you will. And so they'd beg my mom, like, can you please redo our hair and braid our hair like theirs? And pointing at me and my sisters. And so my mom would sit there patiently and part their hair and try to, come up with something that looked similar to the vacation hair they had gotten. And I was sitting there in the doorway. Well, I was standing, not sitting. I was standing in the doorway, and my mom was sitting on her floor braiding the twins' hair. And one year when I was 9, I just remember it as sort of this Broadway production. And the twins were like, "Oh my gosh, it hurts so much. My head hurts. It's too tight. Is my hair falling out? What's happening?" And there were just all of these, things happening. And little Amira, standing there, 9 years old in the doorway, snapped and said, "It's because those kinds of braids are not for your hair." And
Wow.
whoop, I got the death stare from my mom, the stare where she doesn't need any extra words, you're about to get in trouble. And she bit back at me and said, "Amira, that's not nice." And that was one of the earliest moments that I could think back to of when I realized what nice is and what it costs. And for me, what I walked away with, though my mom didn't intend it that day, was that, you know, even if what you're saying is true, if it makes someone else uncomfortable, somehow you're the problem. And I think that's very much what a lot of us experience in the world of work and even just in the world of community and in our relationships, that you can tell the truth, but you often get punished because someone else feels uncomfortable by you speaking and acknowledging that truth. And I wish I had had so many of the tools that I now have today as an adult back then to help me. One of the tools I'll leave you and listeners with this is something called the matching principle. And so Charles Duhigg writes about this in his book, Super Communicators. And he says that we're often in one of 3 conversations. So usually a practical conversation based on, solutions and tasks. The second would be a emotional conversation where we're often seeking empathy and want to connect with people on an emotional level. Or third, a social conversation. That's about building community and friendship. That day with the braids, a little 9-year-old Amira, who is a September Virgo, was in a practical conversation. I'm sitting there watching them, hoot and holler about how much their head hurts. And I'm thinking, okay, the solution is those braids aren't meant for your hair. Your hair is too thin. Your hair will fall out. It is going to hurt your scalp. The solution here is if you want your head to stop hurting, don't get those braids. It's not made for you. I was just being practical. I was like, obviously, this is the best solution. Don't get those braids. That day, though, the twins were not in a practical conversation. They were locked into an emotional conversation. They wanted empathy. They wanted someone to say, "Oh, I'm so sorry that your head hurts. Let me get you an ice pack or this or that." And little practical Amira didn't see how that was a solution. And so had I had some of these tools, and I think we could use this in the workplace today, of just being able to identify, okay, what kind of conversation am I in right now so that I can meet this person in this relationship where they are and move through this conversation in a more effective manner.
Yeah, yeah, no, I love that. I love that. And how old were you when?
I was 9.
9, 9,
Mhm.
9. And so, I'm trying to, problem solve and put
Right.
myself back in that time. So another option could be like, hey, this is a hairstyle that I apologize, I didn't tell you, but it is going to create some tension on the scalp. Do you
Yeah.
want to keep going or should we go ahead and stop?
I love that reframe. That is a great reframe and question to ask.
Braids, I
That
want the braids. Okay, well, suck it up.
exactly. Like, let me just give you all the options, lay out all the truths here, and then you can decide. I like that. I like that.
Right, right. Okay, okay. So let's see. So next is once you entered into the working world and started to
Mhm.
progress into leadership, what roles did these early patterns play? I mean, well, you kind of touched on it. Is there
Mm.
anything more you want to add for the audience?
I think it just turned into me learning to like smooth out the edges, swallow truth, and make everyone else comfortable, right? Those early patterns taught me how to survive, but not necessarily how to lead. And when you get into these work spaces and you need to be a leader, that doesn't always look like somebody who dampens the truth and sets it aside, or somebody who is silent. In fact, it's the opposite. You are a challenger, you are a disruptor. You have the audacity to say and to ask the question of, who does this work for, and does it still work for us? Is this really how we should still be doing things here? And so those patterns early on showed up later in my career where I confused harmony with health, and instead needed to practice more honesty, that nerve, right? I needed honesty over harmony, courage over comfort. And so for too many years, I was silent in my career about things that I knew I had a lot to say about. And I think I'm making up for lost time nowadays.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Rarely ever silent these days.
Now, as you were talking, I was thinking about, for me, I feel like the word adaptable has
Yeah.
evolved. And, for me, more and more, it's become more about anchoring myself in my values, right? So getting
Mm,
clear on who I'm committed to being in this world and anchoring myself in those values, but then leaving room for flexibility and things that maybe I
yes.
didn't consider, right? Because otherwise you can just kind of blow with the wind, you know.
Right.
And so, yeah, so it just made me think about, the concept you were throwing out between survival
Mm.
and just, courage. So, but yeah, okay. So let's talk about the book now, The Price of Nice. And what prompted you to write the book right now? Yeah.
I feel like the world, at first it was that my world was at an inflection point, but now it's that the world is at an inflection point. And after years of so many workplace commitments to diversity, equity, inclusion, years of social unrest, and even quiet quitting, I noticed this collective fatigue, right? People are retreating to comfort and calling it civility. And niceness, I think, is becoming a shield again, where we're afraid to speak truths, to challenge, and to disrupt. And I wrote an entire book about the price of nice because I've learned and picked up some new tools or promising practices, as I call them in the book, over the years that I hope to impart to other people and maybe fast track someone else's ability to practice nerve instead of nice and someone else's ability to receive nerve. I think that's why too many people don't practice nerve because there aren't enough leaders ready to receive it. And I think if we all had more of these tools that I'm offering, we could practice more nerve because more people would be ready to receive it. And so I wanted to name the costs that retreat into self, retreat into silent costs us personally, professionally, societally. And like I said, give people the tools to move beyond that sort of performance of nice into actual progress, which requires disruption, which requires challenging, which requires speaking uncomfortable truths and finding a way to move through discomfort onto the other side of things, which is so much better than than not getting uncomfortable.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's a good point. Okay. So now let's see, you write that niceness is a velvet glove over an iron fist. I mean, that's a powerful line. I mean, and audience, Amira
Mm.
stays with powerful lines, okay? If you follow her on whatever, she is good for dropping a powerful line. So okay, so
I try.
niceness is a niceness is a velvet glove over an iron fist. Can you talk about how this shows up in the workplace or leadership?
Yeah, I'm a very visual person, so I had to come up with something to sort of picture it for myself, and that was one of the images. But in corporate settings, niceness looks like professionalism, but I think that it functions as control. It tells people how to look, how to speak, how to disagree, and it punishes truth telling when it's inconvenient to those who have power within our organizations. Think about, the culture fit interview question, or when someone says that's not a good look for leadership. Those are coded ways of saying stay small, stay agreeable, stay silent. And niceness maintains the hierarchy while pretending that it is creating harmony, and it silences the very voices organizations claim that they want to elevate and claim that they want more of in order to innovate, in order to be expansive and more inclusive as an institution that exists in the world. And so I think it really is a form of control. That's how I think of niceness. And it's a rule, a social construct. I call it in the book, what is a social construct? Just a made up rule. Just like borders. What are borders? Imaginary lines that we drew. Money. What is money? Paper and coins that we decided represent something. And I think that's important to state because if constructs are made up by people, they can also, or constructed by people, they can also be deconstructed by people. And I think that's where our power lies, is in remembering our collective agreement about these constructs means that we can have collective disagreement and decide this thing doesn't work for us anymore. It certainly doesn't work for all of us. Let's deconstruct it and let's try for something new. And I think there's so much hope in that we can build something different and something new if we just collectively decide that this thing over here doesn't work for us anymore.
Now, you maybe touched on this, but I'm still going to ask it, just in case you have anything more to add. What are some of the unseen costs of being nice, both professionally and personally? I feel
Mhm.
like you touched on some already. Is there anything more you'd like to add?
I would. I think I'd like to tell you all a quick story because I think it costs us editing ourselves until we disappear. It keeps us from saying no, from resting, for asking for help. And I often tell this story, and it's one I write about in the book, but how it cost me professionally is I was working at an organization, and in many organizations, people will know the phrase either sacred cows or darling systems. And those are the things, the leaders, habits, rules, norms that you don't challenge, you don't try to change. It's the sort of, we've always done it this way, and this thing has to stay this way, or else. And we had one at this organization. It was actually our CEO, and I'll call him Marty, change the name for anonymity. But Marty was a sacred cow in our organization. He was beloved in the community, and people saw him as a visionary. But inside our organization, he would not accept feedback or critique. And he surrounded himself with a lot of yes people. And we failed as a leadership team and as a board of directors who really had the power. We saw his poor and bad and toxic behavior, but it was never addressed directly. We would talk about it in private, but we'd also tell ourselves, and so would our board of directors, choose your battles, stay in your lane. Like, let's just keep things comfortable. Let's not rock the boat too much. And so, how it cost us, we had this big one shot meeting, sort of a once in a lifetime. So, we fly to Capitol Hill, our executive team, Washington, D.C., to meet with our congressperson, Congresswoman Jackie Spear. And we're pitching her for $9 million for this program that we have. And Marty finishes our collective pitch in the room, and then he decides to end his pitch with a Marty-ism, this phrase that he was known for. He'd sneak it into speeches and meetings all the time, though we had warned him about it. I had warned him about it. So he ends our meeting with Congresswoman Jackie Spear and says, Jackie, I don't know if I'm just sipping my own Kool-Aid. And I felt like my eyes jumped out of my head, and the Congresswoman's staff were frozen and their jaws were on the floor. And Congresswoman Spear looks at Marty and says, you really shouldn't say that to me. And by the way, it was Flavor Aid, not Kool-Aid. And so for any of your listeners who aren't familiar, Congresswoman Jackie Spear back in the 70s was an aide to her congressperson. And they were making a visit to Jonestown, Jim Jones's cult back then. And that day she was harmed. She was actually shot multiple times. And that day there was a mass unaliving. It was 900 people who drank a cyanide-laced beverage, the Flavor Aid, not Kool-Aid, which is very cheeky of her to say. And so the one thing Marty should not have said to the one person he should not have said it to, he did. And why that matters, this was because of, I think, our board of directors failure and our failure as an executive team. We were playing nice and prioritizing comfort, and we didn't put our foot down on some of his behaviors or course correct him in the prep meetings before this big, $9 million opportunity. And it cost us. It cost us embarrassment. It cost us in relationship. It cost us in, saving face that day. And in so many other ways, because we had chosen nice over and over and over again. But if we had chosen nerve, the challenging, the disruption to his behavior, to correct him once and for all of, you can't say this phrase and the way that you behave is inappropriate, it might have saved us, that day. And he may not have said the one thing he shouldn't have said to Congresswoman Jackie Spear that day. And so that's how I think about the cost personally and professionally, is you may not realize it in the moment, but the eventual cost, I promise you, is so much greater than the immediate cost of a little bit of discomfort that you may have to wade through and feel.
Wow, that's a really powerful story. I mean, I would say for sure I've seen that, that harm show up in generations of employees.
Mm,
Like, so, whatever leadership role models their
mm-hmm,
team might be early in their career, and without realizing, they learn not to take feedback. Without realizing, they learn dysfunctional behavior. And it's like the gift that keeps giving. So it's a big part of what can create the change is if that role model behavior early on
mm-hmm.
is, in line with the true values of the company. Because a lot of times there are values, right?
Right.
Um, but yeah, so if those early generation folks, those junior people see that, now they can understand what good looks like, and let's
Mm-hmm.
align to that. But yeah, once you start, a standard, it's hard to kind of get it back on track.
Yeah, so true.
Let's see. So you also break the book into 4 dimensions:
Mhm.
think, feel, do, revisit. Can you walk us through how that framework works in practice?
Absolutely. It's a model that I use every day in my work as a communications practitioner, and others in communications, behavior change, marketing will know it very well because we draw from the world of sociology and psychology. And it's one of the reasons I often describe myself as a behavioral communications consultant, is because I use the tools of think, feel, do, revisit to help people reimagine their beliefs about the world such that they reimagine their actions. So moving from awareness to action. And that's exactly how I wanted to break the book down, is to raise people's awareness around, well, what's the problem with nice, Amira? First, there is a problem. Now that you're aware, what can you do? And so the first dimension is think. So that's all about examining the systems and beliefs that shaped you. I love that you started out with a question around, what were those early moments that shaped you? I often go back to early childhood and the ways in which we are socialized and the early lessons that often stick with us because our brain is developing, right? It's developed by the age of 5, by kindergarten. And so those early lessons really stick. So think is all about examine the systems and the beliefs that shaped you so early on. I think back to some of the childhood stories that we grew up with. I tell people this all the time is, I had this epiphany one day about Goldilocks and the Three Bears. I think we're sold that story as, she's this innocent lost girl who is just hungry and tired. But over time, I was like, no, actually, no. Goldilocks is a thief and a trespasser. She is not some innocent, hungry, lost girl. She is a thief and a trespasser. She really is. So rethink the systems, the beliefs that shaped you. And even the second one is the giving tree. I loved that story as a child. The tree would give to the little boy for whatever he needed, a stump to sit on, branches to build a home. And it's sold to us as a story of generosity and friendship. And as I grew older and as an adult, I said, no, that's a story about toxic relationships. That is not generous. That is toxicity. So think. The think section is all about re-examine the systems, the beliefs, the stories that have shaped you, and ask yourself, if you were raised to keep the peace at any cost, because I know that I was. The second dimension is feel. So name the emotions that come with the unlearning and discomfort that you're feeling, the guilt, the fear, or the grief of changing your patterns, right? There's also a lot of feelings that come up once you recognize your patterns. Sometimes it's like, oh my goodness, I can't believe that's how I've been moving through the world. And that's where growth happens. So name those emotions, and in the unlearning, make sure that you're addressing and working through those emotions. And I give tools in the book for that. The third dimension is do. Take one act of nerve, one micro action today. That could be speak a hard truth in a meeting, or protect someone else's voice in a room, back someone up. What's a micro action you can take now that you're aware you might have been playing into niceness over nerve? And finally, revisit, to reflect and then refine the actions that you take, the beliefs that you hold, because growth isn't linear. It's not a straight line up a ladder. It is cyclical. It is a jungle gym. It's all over the place, and cyclical in that it never ends. There's no point at which you will arrive and be done with your journey of unlearning nice and practicing nerve. I'm still learning things every single day, and I wrote the whole book about it. So revisit really is about building your capacity for courage time and time again, because with each iteration, each cycle, you're going to learn something new. And practicing nerve is like a muscle. And like any muscle, you have to go to the gym and you have to get stronger. Otherwise, it will atrophy. And so you need tools, you need a trainer, and you need a regimen and a routine to get stronger at it constantly.
Yeah. Now, on this podcast, we talk a lot about the patterns that help us survive, but don't always help us lead. For someone listening right now who's realizing that their niceness might be part of a deeper pattern, what's a shift that they could try this week, or even some advice that you would give them? I mean, you touched on your framework just now, so maybe that's relevant and helpful, but is there anything more?
I love this question because I tell people moving from nice to nerve is in the micro actions. I think when I talk about nerve, some people automatically go to, it's got to be like this revolutionary, burning things, turning over tables. Sometimes that's the nerve we need. More times than not, it's the micro actions that you shift day to day. I would say it's similar to what I learned in the epiphany I had around Goldilocks and the giving tree, is the next time someone betrays your boundaries, for example, and you think to yourself or say to them, oh, no worries, it's okay. I want you to pause. I want you to catch that impulse and ask yourself, am I practicing nerve right now or avoidance? And someone overstepped my boundaries. Is it really no worries or are there lots of worries? Catch that impulse, and similar to what you had done a little bit earlier of reframe, just reframe. You could say something as simple as, you know what, actually this is boundary for me and let me explain to you why. And you could even open the door to a conversation with someone. So the simple micro action is catch your impulse, and you don't even have to do it in the moment. Maybe it's that maybe you don't address the person who stepped over your boundary this first time. Maybe it's just simply that you catch that impulse that you have to say no worries and to just let it go. And ask yourself, why am I having this nice reflex right now? What is this? Why do I do that? Why is that the immediate, natural, instinctive behavior that I have? And coach yourself the next time someone oversteps my boundary. Here's what I'm going to say, or here's what I'm going to do. Because it takes that kind of practice and that kind of catching of those impulses to behave differently. So just the next time it happens, catch that impulse and practice what you're going to do or say the next time.
I love that. What's on the horizon for you? I know you have the book.
Yeah.
By the time this airs, the book will have already been in full swing.
That's right.
Yeah, this is book number 2 or 3.
This is my debut under my own name. I co-wrote a book in 2023. So I did co-write a book. What's next for me is just continuing to amplify the message of the book and help others move from awareness to action. That first, nice is a problem. And if nice is a problem, the alternative is nerve. And here's how you practice nerve. And I'll be doing virtual and in-person author talks all through 2026. So even by the time this airs, I'll still be out there at every conference and every room that will have me talking about the price of nice and giving people the tools to practice more nerve. And maybe I'll be working on another book, at least starting the draft by the time this comes out in 2026. We'll see.
Oh, wow. So you enjoy book writing.
I do. I love writing. It's therapeutic. I go to a writer's retreat every summer, every July. I steal away for a week with, it's usually about 24 of us total, other writers, into the middle of nowhere. We walk around barefoot and we eat vegan food and we write together for a whole week together. It's my happy place. I wish writing paid the bills. I wish I could just sit down and write all day, every day. Maybe one day, knock on wood, I'm going to manifest that for myself in the universe. But I do enjoy it. I do. I love words.
I know you're a great writer. Great writer.
Thank you.
We're going to do a little lightning round I call pattern check, just to kind of take a turn from all the serious talk. And
Okay.
this kind of shows the audience another side of you as the guest. So I'm going to go through 2 words, like they're different pairs. And when I go through each pair, I'm just looking for you to tell me which of the 2 words resonates for you and why.
Okay.
No right or wrong answer. Okay, so the first pair is structure or flexibility. Which word resonates and why?
Oh, so hard. My natural inclination is structure. As a September Virgo, I'm super organized. I love an Excel sheet and I like to know what to expect. So my natural inclination is structure.
Got it. She said September Virgo.
That's right.
I'm an August Leo. Okay.
Ah.
All right. But I'm an evolved Leo.
There you go.
So teach or do?
Oh, man. I'm going to say at this stage of my life, teach, because I'm doing a lot of that. And I think once you've learned some things in life, it is your duty in this life to hand others the tools and let them make those tools their own. So I'll say teach this time around.
Morning hustle or late night grind?
I am a night owl. I do not like waking up in the morning, but I will stay up all hours of the night. So definitely night owl.
Save or invest?
Invest. A girl wants to retire one day. Yes.
Yes. Okay. And follow the blueprint or build your own?
Oh, build your own. I'm a builder, have been the entirety of my life and career. And the idea of being able to have your unique fingerprints on something is, I think, a really powerful prospect. And it inspires people to move through the world in different ways. So build.
Okay. All right. So that's the game. That
Nice.
wasn't that harm. That
was fun. Got me thinking. Got the wheels turning.
Before we close, is there anything I didn't touch on that would be good for the audience to know or that you'd like to share? Yeah, just to give us more perspective on you.
It was something that we just ended on. So I talk a lot about, I'm the kind of leader who doesn't want a kingdom to rule or subjects to answer to me. I want a foundation to build on. And as a leader, I see it as my role to lay my brick in the foundation. And the next person that comes after me lays their brick with the tools that we've probably learned together. And then the next person, the next. So we each have a responsibility and a role to lay one brick in the foundation that is this world that we all experience together. So I think I will leave you and your listeners with that, to lay your brick.
I love that. Thank you so much. So as we close, so maybe you weren't taught to question the cost of agreeable, but like Amira reminds us, some of our most deeply ingrained behaviors come with a price. And it's only when we pause to see the pattern that we can choose something new. So Amira, thank you for this conversation and for this book. I'm excited about it. I hope, is it on Audible? I love Audible.
Yes, it will be.
Okay, because I'm a runner, so I like to have Audible in my ear.
Perfect.
So to everyone listening, stay open, stay curious, and keep moving beyond your patterns. And have a good week, everyone. Thank you. Thanks for listening to Beyond the Pattern. If this episode spoke to you, leave a review or send a message. I read every note, and you can reach out to me to get more tools and resources at bukalaogantala.com.